Chapter 39. The Addams Family Christmas Market Hustle. The grand drawing room of the Addams estate glowed with the dim flicker of firelight, casting long, dramatic shadows over the Gothic furniture and the high-vaulted ceiling. Snow continued to drift outside, its silent descent visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air was rich with the scent of old books, pine, and, most prominently, chocolate. Near the fireplace, Callippe sat cross-legged on the plush rug, meticulously counting her inventory of Belgian and Dutch chocolate bars. She handled each one with precision, ensuring every foil-wrapped piece was in pristine condition. Beside her, Pugsley lounged comfortably, picking up bars at random and stacking them into neat piles, his adolescent lion stretched lazily beside him like an oversized house cat. "How much can I sell this for?" Callippe asked, her youthful face scrunched in thought as she glanced at her 13-year-old uncle. Pugsley, always quick with an answer when it came to schemes, smirked. "I think we can sell them for $5 each." Callippe hummed in thought, clearly calculating profits in her little mind. Before she could respond, Tyler entered the room, hands stuffed into his pockets. His gaze swept over the assortment of chocolate bars, before landing on the two schemers. "What's with all the chocolate?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Callippe is planning to sell chocolates at the Christmas market tonight," Pugsley said, biting into one of the samples without hesitation. Tyler whistled. "Belgian and Dutch chocolate? That must have been expensive." "Not really," Callippe answered, barely looking up as she wrapped another bar. "Mama got them from a wholesaler." That was when the Hyde stirred, slipping into control with an easy smirk. His posture shifted subtly, his voice taking on a more amused edge. He crouched down beside Callippe, picking up a chocolate bar and turning it over in his fingers. "How much are you charging for these?" $5 apiece, Pugsley replied, unfazed by the shift in Tyler's demeanor. Hyde let out a low hum of approval. "And how much did your mother pay for them?" Callippe tilted her head, considering for a moment. "Mama said it cost $0.25 of Ben Franklin." Hyde chuckled. "So about $2.83 per bar." He smirked at Callippe, clearly impressed. "That's quite the markup." Before Callippe could respond, Wednesday strode into the room, her presence commanding as always. Dressed in her signature black attire, she barely spared a glance at the stacks of chocolate before turning her sharp gaze to her niece. "Make sure to calculate the sales tax," she said smoothly. "If nobody is buying from your booth, remind them that it's for charity." Callippe blinked. "It is?" Wednesday's lips barely twitched into what might have been amusement. "'Tis the season for capitalism, after all." Pugsley grinned. "People love feeling good about themselves during Christmas. If they think their money is going to a good cause, they'll buy twice as much." Hyde let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "An Addams teaching business tactics. I love it." Callippe considered this before nodding. "Then I'll say the proceeds go to a cause." Tyler crossed his arms, smirking. "And what cause would that be?" Callippe met his gaze with an innocent expression. "The Callippe Addams Future Investment Fund." Pugsley nearly choked on his laughter. Wednesday gave a single nod of approval. "Smart," Hyde murmured, genuinely impressed. Tyler exhaled, shaking his head. The Addams family at the historic Westfield Christmas market. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the snow-covered rooftops, the Addams family arrived at the heart of the historic town. Unlike the modernized cities that lay beyond the hills, this place was a relic of another time, preserved and untouched by the neon glare of the 21st century. The cobblestone streets, slick with a fresh layer of frost, wound their way between half-timbered buildings, their Tudor facades adorned with pine wreaths, flickering lanterns, and crimson ribbons. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts, mulled wine, and fresh pastries. The Christmas market was alive with the hum of townsfolk bundled in wool coats, their boots crunching softly against the icy stone. Stalls lined the main square, each one offering handmade crafts, spiced cider, or festive trinkets. Carriage rides rolled down the main road, their horses decorated with silver bells that jingled in rhythm with the gentle snowfall. A towering evergreen stood at the market's center, its branches heavy with candlelit lanterns and ornaments that glowed warmly against the evening sky. Calliope's booth, of course, was set up in an ideal location, right along the main thoroughfare where the foot traffic was heaviest. It was no accident. The Addams family had influence here. As Tyler helped secure the last of the wooden signboards to the booth, the thought lingered in the back of his mind. The Addams family practically owns this town. It wasn't just money or property. It was the weight of their presence, the way the townspeople moved with a mix of respect and wariness when they saw Wednesday, the way merchants nodded deferentially as Morticia and Gomez passed by, and the way no one dared challenge their claim to the best booth location. Pugsley unrolled a dark crimson tablecloth, its fabric embroidered with intricate Gothic patterns, and helped Calliope arrange the last of the chocolate bars in neat rows. The gold and silver foil gleamed under the lantern light. "You ready for this?" Tyler asked, glancing down at Calliope as she adjusted her coat. The 5-year-old nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the passing crowds like a seasoned merchant assessing potential customers. "I was born ready." Wednesday, standing beside Tyler, observed with satisfaction. "Then let the extortion begin. The chocolate hustle begins." The first customers arrived quickly, drawn by the delicious scent of fine chocolate and the novelty of the Addams name attached to it. A well-dressed woman approached, eyeing the display. "Oh, Belgian and Dutch chocolate?" Calliope clasped her hands behind her back and nodded. "The finest. Handmade. Rich in history. And conveniently available for purchase." The woman chuckled. "And how much?" $5 each, Calliope said smoothly. "A perfect treat for a winter's evening. And every purchase supports a cause." The woman's interest piqued. "A cause?" Callippe gave her best innocent, wide-eyed look. "The Callippe Addams Future Investment Fund." The woman blinked. "Oh, that's for a young girl's dreams and ambitions, come on. She has to buy a Christmas present for more than a dozen people." Wednesday added flatly from behind the booth, her deadpan delivery making it impossible to tell if she was serious or mocking. The woman hesitated for a fraction of a second before smiling. "Well, that's honest. I'll take 3. As she handed over a crisp $20 bill, Tyler smirked. The Addams way, mystique, charm, and just the right touch of unsettling honesty. More customers followed, and soon a small line formed at the booth. An older gentleman leaned in, adjusting his spectacles. "Excuse me, young lady, but do you have a special deal for bulk purchases?" Calliope tilted her head thoughtfully. "How much bulk are we talking?" He stroked his beard. "Perhaps a dozen bars?" Pugsley, ever the opportunist, jumped in. "Buy 12, and we'll throw in a 13th for free." Calliope gave him a look before nodding. "Yes. A baker's dozen, since it's Christmas." The old man beamed, pulling out his wallet. "Excellent. You've got yourself a deal." Tyler leaned against the side of the booth, watching as transaction after transaction took place. Calliope handled herself with a composure beyond her years, adapting her sales pitch with precision. When a group of younger children stopped by, she played up the sweetness. When a businessman hesitated, she dropped facts about the luxury of Belgian chocolate. When a skeptical customer seemed unsure, she casually mentioned that the Addams family had exceptional taste, and who wouldn't want to share the same indulgence? Hyde chuckled in the back of Tyler's mind. "This kid's a natural." "You sure she's not part Hyde?" Tyler shook his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. "She's just an Addams." And that, it seemed, was more than enough. The Christmas market stretched far beyond the bustling main square, winding into narrow alleyways and hidden courtyards where the lanterns flickered against centuries-old stone walls. Wrought iron balconies hung overhead, draped with holly and mistletoe, their shadows dancing across the cobblestone streets. Snow crunched underfoot as townsfolk moved leisurely, some sipping mulled wine from ceramic mugs while others admired handwoven scarves and carved wooden toys. Tyler had been standing near the booth, arms crossed, watching Callippe handle her business like a seasoned con artist. It was cute, in a mildly concerning way. But Hyde was bored. Painfully bored. "We're seriously just gonna stand here all night?" Hyde grumbled in Tyler's mind. "Babysitting a 5-year-old like some kind of unpaid intern?" Tyler rolled his eyes. "We're keeping an eye on her. She's Wednesday's niece. Pugsley is literally right there." Hyde huffed. "Kid's got a whole-ass guard dog. And let's be real, no one's stupid enough to mess with an Addams in this town." Tyler sighed, shoving his hands into his coat pockets. He could already feel Hyde pushing against the edges of his control, impatient, restless. Before he could stop it, the shift happened, subtle, fluid, like a change in the wind. His stance relaxed, his smirk sharpened, and when he turned, it wasn't Tyler who was looking at Wednesday anymore. It was Hyde. "Come on, cockroach," he murmured, leaning down slightly so only she could hear. "Pugsley's got it covered. Might as well have some fun while we're here." Wednesday, who had been watching Callippe work the crowd with mild satisfaction, slowly turned her gaze to him. Her expression was unreadable, but her dark eyes flickered with something, curiosity, perhaps. Or suspicion. Hyde grinned. "What do you say, Addams? A little tour of the Christmas market? Maybe I'll even let you pick out a festive knife as a souvenir." Pugsley barely glanced up from his seat beside Callippe, who was still counting money like a tiny, efficient mob boss. "Go ahead," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "We got this." Callippe nodded in agreement. "I'm fine here, Aunt Wednesday. Enjoy the market with Uncle Tyler." Hyde let out a short laugh at that. Wednesday shot Callippe a cool stare, but the little girl was unfazed. After a beat, Wednesday adjusted her gloves and stepped away from the booth. "Fine. But if you attempt anything remotely romantic, I'll be forced to retaliate." Hyde smirked, stepping in beside her as they began to weave through the market's labyrinth of stalls. "I wouldn't dream of it," he said, though the teasing lilt in his voice suggested otherwise. The Christmas market sprawled before them like an old-world fairy tale frozen in time, its candlelit paths winding through Gothic archways and shadowy courtyards. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, catching the glow of iron lanterns hanging from the eaves. The hum of the crowd mixed with the distant sound of a street violinist playing a haunting melody. Hyde walked beside Wednesday, his hands stuffed into his coat pockets, his grin sharp as he took in their surroundings. "So, where to first, mi amor?" he mused. "Carriage ride? Tarot reading? Or are you more of a let's find the nearest taxidermy stall kind of girl?" Wednesday barely spared him a glance. "I don't believe in tarot," she said flatly. "And I'd rather walk than sit in a carriage pulled by a horse forced into seasonal servitude." Hyde huffed a laugh. "You really know how to kill a guy's sense of holiday cheer." "I consider that a talent," Wednesday replied smoothly. They wove through the market, pausing at a stall that sold preserved animal specimens encased in glass domes. Hyde picked up one containing a raven skull, tilting it in the light. "This is kind of nice," he admitted, his tone only half mocking. "Something about a dead bird just screams Christmas spirit." Wednesday examined a glass case filled with perfectly arranged bat skeletons. "Genuine appreciation for mortality is far more festive than the hollow joy of consumerism," she said, before finally looking at him. "But you already knew that." Hyde smirked. "I do love a girl with a proper worldview." He paid for the raven skull without a second thought, handing it to Wednesday. She accepted it wordlessly, tucking it into her coat pocket before leading them toward another section of the market. Knife throwing and mulled wine. Further down, a makeshift range had been set up for knife throwing. Wooden targets shaped like Christmas angels were pinned to the far wall, their painted smiles already marred with dozens of embedded blades. Hyde's grin widened. "Now this is more like it." He stepped up to the stall, rolling his shoulders. The vendor, an older man with a skeptical expression, handed him a knife. "You any good at this, kid?" the man asked. Hyde twirled the blade between his fingers effortlessly. "You tell me." He hurled it in one smooth motion, embedding it dead center in the angel's forehead. The vendor's eyebrows shot up. "Huh. Not bad." Hyde grabbed another knife. "Not bad?" He threw 3 in rapid succession, each one landing exactly where he wanted, both eyes and the heart. The vendor let out a low whistle. "Damn. All right, Dark Prince, you win a prize." Before Hyde could reach for anything, Wednesday stepped up beside him. "Give me 5 knives," she instructed. Hyde raised a brow. "Feeling competitive, Addams?" Wednesday ignored him, accepting the knives with practiced ease. Without hesitation, she sent each one flying, striking with surgical precision, 4 knives embedding in the angel's limbs, the final one slitting its painted throat. The vendor took a step back. "Well, that's disturbing." Wednesday turned to Hyde. "I win." Hyde let out a deep chuckle, slow and appreciative. "You really know how to flirt, don't you?" She stared at him, unblinking. "I wasn't flirting." "Sure you weren't, cara mia." She chose a prize, a small, intricately carved dagger, and slipped it into her coat. Hyde, still smirking, grabbed a second one for himself before they walked away. As they strolled back into the market's main thoroughfare, Hyde snagged 2 cups of mulled wine from a passing vendor, handing one to Wednesday. "Here," he said. "For your hollow joy of consumerism." Wednesday sniffed the drink but took a sip. It was dark, rich with spices, and pleasantly warm against the cold air. Hyde leaned in slightly. "So? Am I the best date you've ever had?" Wednesday took another sip before replying. "The competition isn't exactly fierce." Hyde laughed, the sound warm and unrestrained. "I'll take it." Further down, a small courtyard had been transformed into a dance floor. A string quartet played a waltz as couples twirled beneath an ancient stone archway, mistletoe hanging overhead. The lanterns cast long, flickering shadows against the walls, making the entire scene look like something out of another century. Wednesday stopped at the edge of the courtyard, watching the dancers with a neutral expression. Hyde, however, saw an opportunity. "Come on, cockroach," he said, offering his hand with an exaggerated flourish. "Let's give the people a show." She stared at him, unmoving. "I don't dance." He smirked. "Liar." She narrowed her eyes. Hyde stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We both know you can. The real question is, are you afraid to dance with me?" That did it. Wednesday exhaled softly, then, without warning, placed her gloved hand in his. "Try and keep up," she murmured. Hyde's grin sharpened. He pulled her onto the floor, leading with an ease that was both confident and instinctive. The waltz was slow, deliberate, the kind of dance that required tension, one partner pushing, the other pulling. And neither of them were the type to yield easily. Their movements were smooth, controlled. Hyde kept his grip firm, testing her just enough to see how she'd react. Wednesday, in turn, was flawless, matching his pace with precision, her gaze never breaking from his. As they moved, he leaned in slightly. "You know," he murmured, "if you weren't so set on pretending you hate this, you might actually enjoy yourself." Wednesday's lips barely quirked. "And if you weren't so predictable, I might actually find you impressive." Hyde let out a low chuckle. "Admit it, Addams, you're having fun." She didn't answer. But she also didn't stop dancing. The song ended, but they didn't move apart immediately. There was a beat of silence between them, the world narrowing to just the space they occupied. Then, just as casually as it had begun, Wednesday stepped back. "That was tolerable," she said. Hyde chuckled. "High praise, coming from you." She turned, walking away without another word. Hyde, still smirking, followed. This might have been the strangest date in history. But, somehow, it was also perfect. The night was settling into a peaceful quiet, the market's lively chatter fading into a soft hum as they moved further from the dance floor. Hyde's presence had lingered like an uninvited guest, but Tyler's control had slowly crept back, and with it, a calmness settled between them. The weight of Hyde's teasing, his dominance in the space they'd shared, gradually dissolved as Tyler found his footing again. Wednesday walked beside him, her expression unreadable, but not cold. He could feel her attention shift from the bustle of the market to the way the lanterns flickered against the old stone buildings. He felt lighter, and the usual tension that defined his interactions with her seemed to ease just slightly. Tyler glanced over at her, a small, genuine smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Kind of refreshing, isn't it?" he said, the words flowing naturally. "Our usual date nights in Jericho mainly consist of dinner and a movie inside an old, abandoned mansion or crypt." He let out a soft laugh, trying to keep the mood light. Wednesday's lips twitched, the smallest hint of amusement crossing her features. "I do have to admit that the change in venue and activities is kind of refreshing," she said, her eyes flicking to him for a moment before returning to the path ahead. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked, a soft contrast to the tense rhythm of their usual encounters. Tyler's smile widened at her acknowledgement. "I'm glad you think so. I was starting to feel like we were getting stuck in a routine. Not that I mind our usual haunts. I'm just, well, I like this. Doing something different with you." Wednesday shot him a sideways glance. "Don't get too sentimental," she said, though her tone lacked its usual edge. There was something different in her voice, a softness that didn't feel entirely out of place. "I do enjoy the occasional deviation from our typical routines. It's just, unexpected." Tyler couldn't help the soft chuckle that escaped him. "You know, I wasn't trying to be sentimental," he said, his voice light. "But I'm glad we're on the same page. This is nice." She turned to him slightly, her gaze steady and searching. "Nice doesn't seem like a word that belongs in your vocabulary, Tyler," she said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "I would have thought chaotic or disastrous would suit you better." Tyler laughed, a sound that felt real, more himself than he had in a while. "Yeah, well, maybe I'm just getting soft in my old age." He teased, but there was an ease to it now, one that felt genuine. "But if being nice means more moments like this, then I'll take it." They stopped for a moment as they reached a small stall selling handmade candles. The soft light from the candles reflected off Wednesday's pale face, making her look ethereal in the glow. Tyler noticed her looking at them with mild curiosity, and without thinking, he reached for one of the dark, twisted shapes, a candle shaped like a raven. "I think this would suit you," he said with a playful grin, handing it to her. She raised an eyebrow at him but accepted the gift, her fingers brushing against his for a brief moment. "A raven," she said, her voice as dry as ever. "You know me well." He shrugged, the smile still lingering on his face. "I like to think I do." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, the snow continuing to fall gently around them. For the first time, there wasn't an undertone of tension, no play on words or dark humor to hide behind. It was just them, standing in the midst of the festive chaos, sharing a moment that felt surprisingly simple. After a beat, Tyler glanced at the time. "We should probably head back. I'm sure Callippe and Pugsley are wondering where we've gotten off to." Wednesday nodded, the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Yes, before they send out a search party." Tyler offered his arm with a half-joking bow. "After you, my lady." She looked at him, the faintest smile flickering again. "Lead the way, Tyler." As they walked back toward the booth where Callippe and Pugsley were waiting, the weight of the night's events hung between them, but not in an uncomfortable way. It was simply there, like an understanding they had yet to fully articulate, but somehow didn't need to. In that moment, everything felt almost normal. A rare thing for Tyler and Wednesday, but one that he was beginning to appreciate more than he expected. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.